There is a piece of wisdom from the Roman emperor and philosopher Marcus Aurelius that is so counterintuitive it feels like a riddle. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This is not a call for positive thinking. It is a strategic manual for dealing with reality. It suggests that the obstacle in your path, the thing you are desperately trying to get around, is not an inconvenient detour. It is the raw material for a new and often superior path forward. It suggests that your greatest disadvantage can be inverted into your greatest weapon. I want to take you to a specific moment in history when this principle was demonstrated not as a philosophy, but as a brutal and brilliant act of survival. The year is 1415. The place is a rain-soaked field in northern France. King Henry V of England has led his army on a campaign that has gone disastrously wrong. They are exhausted, starving, and racked with dysentery. They are trying to march to the safety of a port, but their path is blocked by a French army that outnumbers them at least 5-1. The English are trapped. Their situation is, by any objective measure, hopeless. The French nobility, confident and resplendent in their polished plate armor, know they have already won. Their strength is overwhelming. They possess the medieval equivalent of a tank division, thousands of heavily armored knights on powerful war horses. Their plan is simple, logical, and has worked for centuries. A massive, unstoppable cavalry charge that will shatter the English line and crush the starving peasants underfoot. The English have one final, desperate choice to make: where to stand and fight, and the ground they are forced to stand on is their single greatest impediment. It is a narrow field, recently plowed, flanked by dense woods, and for days it has been pouring rain. The ground has been churned into a thick, sucking, ankle-deep mud. For the French, this mud is an annoyance. For the English, who are sick and weak, it is a nightmare. It saps their strength. It makes movement a misery. It is the physical manifestation of their wretched situation. This obstacle, this muddy field, should have been the final nail in their coffin. But on the morning of the battle, the English did something remarkable. They stopped seeing the mud as their problem and started seeing it as their only solution. They inverted the obstacle. They realized that the thing that hindered them would absolutely cripple an army of thousands of horses and men weighing hundreds of pounds each. They chose not to fight the mud, but to make it their ally. The English archers, the core of their army, did two things. First, they planted long, sharpened stakes in the ground in front of them, creating a deadly fence. Then they began to fire. They unleashed a storm of arrows that provoked the French into exactly what the English wanted: a full, arrogant, headlong charge. What was supposed to be a thundering, glorious assault descended into a horrifying slog. The French knights, weighed down by their own strength, were swallowed by the mud. The horses slipped and fell, crushing their riders. The charge lost all momentum, and the magnificent French army dissolved into a chaotic, struggling mass of men and animals, trapped in a quagmire of their own making. The English, lightly armored and on foot, were able to move through the chaos. They abandoned their bows and fought with swords and axes. The very thing that had been their greatest disadvantage, the muddy, wretched ground, had become their decisive weapon. They had not won in spite of the obstacle. They had won because of it. What stood in the way had become the way. This story is not a simple lesson in perseverance. It is a lesson in perception. It teaches us that when we are faced with a crippling constraint, a tight budget, a small team, a difficult market, a personal limitation, our first instinct is to lament it, to see it as the thing preventing us from executing our grand plan. But the most powerful strategic thinking does not ask, how do we get around this obstacle? It asks, how do we use it? How can this limitation be turned into a filter that exhausts our competition? How can this disadvantage be inverted into an advantage that no one else possesses? The impediment to action advances action. It is not a riddle. It is a blueprint.